sun and the sea. We wanna be, we wanna be.
Chances are, if you catch a Ziggy Alberts show, it's going to begin with the sun and the sea. Find out why as we talk to Ziggy before he brings his Rewind World Tour to New Zealand. We tracked him down to West Hollywood in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I just got in yesterday from France.
Right.
And I was playing some shows with Jack Johnson, which is why I stayed in Europe after my European leg of the headline tour.
Right.
And I'm just here doing a run of press in LA before I start my North American tour in Victoria, BC.
There you go. So how you and Jack getting along these days?
He deals with me, he
I'm sure.
he puts up with me. We're getting along fine, besides one incident where he invited me on stage and I was nowhere to be seen, which was my worst nightmare.
Right.
But besides that, we get along fine.
Oh, good. Well, that's a relief.
Hopefully, he has me. No, it's been. I've only known him more since these last two tours we did together, where I did some shows with him in Australia and some shows in Europe.
Right.
And it's what's that saying? Like, don't meet your heroes. But in this case, it's like the man behind the music and his team are as fantastic or more fantastic than you could imagine.
Oh, that's nice to know. Excellent.
Yes.
So you're going to be here in New Zealand and down under in general in a couple of months. So that's very exciting. And I think you're bringing Nathan Ball with you as well, who you played with in the UK. Is that right?
Yes, I'm going to be bringing in Nathan Ball and another artist from Australia called Little Green.
Okay.
Young lady who's a bit of a breakout, one of my favorite up and coming musicians. And Nathan, a very old friend of mine. We've toured together on and off for years, and he seems to be a bit of a favorite actually in Oz and New Zealand. Like, people have asked for him to come back since our first Oz tour many years ago.
Right.
And so it's going to be great to be on the road with some very stellar humans. They're great humans. And I basically finish up in North America, have a couple of weeks off, and then start the NZ run as the very beginning of my, come back to NZ as the start of my AU NZ run. And first time back in Auckland in 3.5 years, which is way too long.
Well, things have happened in between there that probably kept you from coming here. So, there is that. So everybody's just kind of finding.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think last when we spoke, it was when your album "Dancing in the Dark" came out. So, and that was back.
That's exactly right.
In November. So what is that? Does it feel like since November that you're kind of finding your feet, having to kind of climb back on and try again, or are you just picking up where you left off?
It feels like yesterday that we talked, to be honest. I remember the run of interviews I did around that time, and it really does, right? It's like when you say November, it makes me makes me nervous to think that we're in July.
Yes.
It's since November. Wow, what a whirlwind. So I jumped on my first tour with Jack in December, obviously, after we talked, and then it was a crazy summer at home as far as I was just like surfing and spending as much time, I guess, out and about. I actually moved back into my van, to be totally honest, because my little beach shack was getting knocked down, so I just moved into my van and was just hopping up and down the coast, kind of kicking it old school. And then I've been overseas since April. I came back to South Africa. When we last talked, I'd just done South Africa, and then in April I did South Africa again.
Right.
Came straight to Europe, did all of Europe and the UK. Had a couple of weeks off, did some more shows with Jack, and a couple more weeks off, and now I'm here. So it's been a whirlwind. Definitely feel more. What's the word? Well oiled regarding the live show.
Right.
40 odd shows in. 42 shows into the year, I'm feeling much more. You just match fit. It's like people would play for sport. You just been on the field.
Yep.
And, much like perhaps doing a podcast or an interview 3 months at a time, it's deeply uncomfortable. When you're doing it every week, it's something that's like a conversation between two people. So that's a nice thing. So yeah, it's been a whirlwind year so far.
Right. And I assume people want to talk to you about the new album. What kind of feedback do you get when you're out and about and around the world?
the thing I've been kind of shocked by, considering I've had 2 new albums out since the last world tour, is yeah, people are asking for more, for me to play more songs off the new album, which I'm very pleased about.
Oh,
Like
good.
that's a great level of feedback that
Right.
people would want you to play more of your new songs, because it's been such a to come out to have 22 new songs to fit into a set list since my last world tour is just like
Yep.
a headache for sure. It's keeps me up at night,
Yep.
and the new album so far has had a really wonderful feedback, and it's been very different. It doesn't need to be. The more albums you do, the less they necessarily need to be like a fan favorite. The more I see the live show, it's more a opportunity to play the best of your work,
Right.
and the best of your live work isn't necessarily the best of your writing, or it isn't necessarily what is the most creative or the most. They aren't necessarily the same thing. And for me, what's important with the live show is I just go and play what the people want to hear. But what's been crazy is people have wanted to hear more of the new album than I've already been playing. So I definitely should consider in the next, the next 6 months of the year about, how I fit in more new songs off the album. So yeah, the feedback's been crazy. I might be looks like I'm going to Brazil for the first time before I arrive to New Zealand.
Right.
And that's because one of the songs off the record called Rewind, which is kind of like a bit of a jazzier number. It's like a bossa nova number. And
Right.
that song, which isn't the song that like everybody requests live, but it's the song that everyone who speaks like Portuguese or has some more like Latin interest requests, and it's the song that's kind of really broken me with radio presence in Brazil.
I wanna make this sweeter, baby. Can we make it personal? Wanna know you closer, darling. Teach me as your hips sway slow. And I know you want this oasis deep. So when it's cold out, we'll stay in heat. Been cooking in the kitchen and we got it on lock. Oven on 240 and a smoker.
This album's been very different to previous ones that might have been born out of this live space. And there's one song off the album I play every night. Two in particular that I play that I really enjoy, that are kind of fundamental to my live show now. One's called The Sun and the Sea. And I open every show with that song. It's like my opening song, and it kind of really sets the stage. The opening lines are, "We want to be famous, but we don't really mind what for."
Right.
And it's quite a contradiction it's not a contradiction. It's like quite a commentary of polarity in terms, because you're on stage,
Right. There you
launching
are.
a night,
Yeah.
and so it's a lot of fun to have that kind of duality.
Yep.
And I do one song totally without any instrumentation. I do it in total to a backing track, exactly as it's recorded. I come out just to tracks, and I just stand there and sing this song called Dancing in the Dark, the title track.
Right.
And that's been really fun, because that's really scary to do when you're an acoustic artist who plays everything live.
Right.
To then do the flip of that, to come out and do that song towards the end of the night. It's got this beautiful big 808 synth bass. That's the frequencies in particular in that song. Like the bass that gets played is like barely audible to the ear. It's down like
Way down.
It's down 40 and 50 and 80 hertz.
Right.
And so it just it totally resets the room, because you get this frequency that doesn't exist in the other parts of my set,
Yep.
I think we can do better. Keeping our head up. Dancing in the dark, and I think we can do better. Keeping our head up. Dancing in the dark with you.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with the response to the album, and kind of shocked about. And it's what's crazy is to think of all the vinyls on this last tour, and on these tours that are being sold of this album, of people hearing it for the first time, hearing me for the first time.
Yep.
And that's where in this new world we're in, there's not enough grace for albums to be discovered. Like now, I don't know, and you could speak on this, but even when I started out, you released an album, 8 years ago, you'd release an album, then tour it to build it up.
Sure.
And now there's this whole expectation that you release an album and that's when it's a hit. And
Right.
I think it's quite ridiculous because
Right.
an album might take some time.
Yep.
And people don't know the songs. And so I think that's an interesting reflection just on how there'll probably be more people after this tour that will want to hear these songs than before.
Right.
And that's crazy because, that's a crazy thing to imagine. So yeah, very lucky.
Very good. Now, what other than music, the other thing I think, or one of the things that you're involved with is ocean awareness. Is that right? Yeah. So I've been reading, and probably everybody else has been reading, especially, the ocean's in a bit of temperatures are rising. What is it, like 100 degrees in Fahrenheit and off of Florida somewhere? I mean, what are your thoughts about that? What are you following? What are you thinking?
That's a really nice question. So it's funny you say that because I was in France and I was in the Basque country. So there's a place, it's actually borders Spain, San Sebastian. And there's a place called Biarritz, and a little surf city in, I guess, is it maybe the west coast of France? And I'm there and it's boiling hot and, trying to go surfing. And because it's summertime, there's an algae bloom. And the algae bloom's like making people sick. And then they've had rain and like the water's filthy. And as far as I surf in pretty dirty water on a half regular occasion, but it was the sort of thing where you're coming out of the water, spraying salt, stuff up your nose. And, I had my new little, I came off a bicycle while I was there. So you're cleaning out your wounds. And, I definitely have like what's the word I'm looking for? I have the fire on that topic has been relit for me, not because I guess when you have big kind of social political situations like the last couple of years, like everyone's focus shifts, and because things have gotten easier on that front, you have the ability, and you're fortunate enough, we're rich enough again with our thinking space to consider, like you said, the 100 Fahrenheit, water off Florida, or in this case, and like you're there at the beach, you've traveled around the world, and you're like ready to try and go for a surf, and you're essentially like, just wanting to go surfing, but there's a terrible bacteria in the water,
right? And
you just think, like, what the honest thoughts I had when I was there was like, where is our self-esteem as humanity? Like, as far as where is our own legitimate self-esteem, in the sense of, like, we should prioritize being able to swim in our water and being able to have cleaner rivers. Like, it just is, if anything, a show of like our lack of, I think our lack of sometimes our genuine esteem for our health, and obviously for our future.
Yep.
And what I like about trying to attempt to have cleaner oceans, for example, is the degree to which you succeed is very obvious.
Yep.
And the degree to which the river is cleaner is obvious. So there's many things that are subtle and debatable.
Right.
When it comes to environmental conservation.
Right.
And what's nice about cleaner oceans and cleaner rivers as a push is that the result is so clear.
Right.
When you succeed, it's obvious. And that to me is like, it's just crazy. It's crazy when you get to the point that, like, like you're standing by the water and you don't go in because there's an algae bloom and a bacteria problem that's, from stuff that's as basic as poor plumbing. And that's something I experienced in South Africa too, where it's just like, it's down to, we actually know how to deal with it, but it's not being dealt with. And that's just a lack of priority. And so I really hope in the coming years, I don't know how, but definitely the fire has been restoked for me on trying to figure out, there was a crazy statistic around how much of the pollution in the water, or the pollution that we see in the ocean, the majority of it is from, the 8 biggest rivers in the world. And so there's some argument that perhaps the approach we need to take is we need to work our way down from the mountains right through to the rivers. because that's where everything's going from. And
Right.
where I can be, where I am an optimist is that there is plenty of examples of once you establish your acidity versus alkalinity in water, and once you establish the infrastructure, like nature really does rebuild and repair once you make the space for it to happen.
Right.
And so, man, if it's for as selfish a reason as like, it's such a joy to be able to go for a swim.
Right.
For you and me,
Yep.
it's such a joy. And if that is, even if that's the only reason that like it's as selfish as, besides the myriad of reasons, like the myriads of reasons as to why
Right.
we need, an ocean that has more stability and perhaps it's a little cleaner, is it's such a joy when you swim in a clean river, when you swim in the ocean and it's clean and you don't come out having to have essentially medical intervention to stop yourself getting sick.
Yeah.
It's an immense joy, and that joy is something that should and can be prioritized as well, alongside the way it all affects our whole ecosystem. So I don't know exactly where we're at on that front, but I think some of it, perhaps it's just still the basics that, in the case of where I was in France and South Africa, it says fundamental as better sewage management. It's that fundamental,
Yep.
and that's where we can see that improving the quality of those things that are a very human thing, a very society-based thing,
Yep.
can have a great environmental impact. That's where some of the best improvements can be made. So in that sense, I'm an optimist, and I hope we continue to connect with our reality and see value in that.
Well, value is an interesting word because it's all about money, really, when you think about it. All that stuff costs money, and there's plenty of money around. Obviously, somebody just has to decide where they want to spend it, right? And so, as an artist, and let's face it, lots of artists feel the same way you do. So, but they only have so much power to do they don't make that much money. But there are people in the music business and elsewhere who do. So, do you have any way through your art and through whatever it is you do to influence what they can do?
Yeah, and I hear you absolutely. As far as there's the first and the most obvious is in your lyrical storytelling ability.
Right.
I think in the touring space, I'm really excited, even though we're just at the very beginning phase. I'm really excited for what we're going to achieve in Australia and New Zealand with our green touring initiatives.
Right.
That's something that I'm really excited for. Like, got some kind of big developments in the background with how we might be able to continue to improve the touring aspect, because there's huge waste. No one should pretend like touring does not come with waste. And and as far as, like you said, about the priority of like the money exists to make that change. And in that way, what's quite ironic, I think, as I consider it more, is that it is so much about I don't want to use the word awakening because it's too esoteric, but
Yep.
when you hit that reality, when you're in Florida or Auckland or France, and you're standing on the water's edge, and like in my case, you go duck dive, and you're like dealing with that level of like, it's gross.
Right.
That's such a visceral experience. And so I think there is something to be said for people experiencing it firsthand. And man, to some degree, it's actually about your personal. There's probably a handful of people in the world, if they actually wanted to if they realized that feeling in themselves,
Yep.
that could make change. And there is, like 7 or 8 billion people who are motivated, and it is too easy to, it won't make a big difference, said, billions of people. And so that's where I'm excited to keep advocating for as much like responsibility, because I think if I don't try and do the best job I can, whether that's through advocacy or improving your waste output with touring or working with foundations, like that's, if you don't advocate first and foremost the personal responsibility, again, even if it's just for your own joy, even if it's just because you like swimming in clean water,
Right.
if we don't, because it's the personal advocacy of the personal responsibility taken by mega corporate entities, where there is the most opportunity for positive change.
Yeah.
Like there could be, with such small shifts of your personal realization, such mega impact. And that's the exciting side product of having a platform or being a world touring artist or having any level of success in business, in music or otherwise, is that you actually can have a greater impact. And that's, again, that's an exciting prospect. Wow. Like what could be possible?
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, I hope we can, as humanity seems to, I hope we can push it so far, and that we do realize once it is critical, and that we, I do think there is a huge amount of ingenuity, and I think the regenerative ability of our natural spaces is so beyond our imagination. And I think that, humanity seems to just need to push things so far in order to turn them around. So,
all righty, let's see what happens. So you're going to be here in October. What have you got to tell folks who are waiting for you? What should they look forward to the most? What are you looking forward to the most?
I'm looking forward to the kind of the wealth of experience that I get to bring to New Zealand from this tour.
Right.
Because as you embark on a world tour, you get to have a wealth of experience in performance.
Yep.
In how you tell the story of the evening, and in the performance and development of the song. And that to me is such an exciting thing to bring home from this tour.
Right.
And which is why I'm really happy that these shows aren't at the beginning of the tour and are in fact at the end, because even if you're tired, you're more experienced. And I think I've had some really big leaps while I've been overseas. I've been incorporating a lot of poetry into the transition of the night.
Right.
And that's been like a really new, I've never done that before. And so to be doing that now, and it's really added a really fundamental dimension that I think is relatively unique to the set. It's unique to the evening in ways that I haven't seen other artists doing.
Got it.
And that's exciting because there's very little of what I do that is actually unique. You know, like there's a lot of common themes that we're all doing, and that's just fine. It doesn't need to, but anytime you stumble upon something that's actually relatively unique to your performance, it's like, whoa, how cool is that? So
yep.
I don't think I think it's quite dynamic. I don't think the set list has ever been, because of, I guess, the dynamic nature of the albums that have been released, Dancing in the Dark being such a new and different take on stuff, you know, it's never had more dynamic force. And so that's really exciting because I don't assume that I didn't assume before this world tour that necessarily my sets were better than the last one. I didn't necessarily think just because you got new songs doesn't mean that your live show gets better. Sometimes it can just get more convoluted.
Right.
So I'm excited that the live show seems to be in a better place than ever. I'm feeling my team's in a stronger place as it's ever been. And I've discovered some new shifts that are totally a new dimension compared to the last shows, which is I'm really excited to bring home to Australia and New Zealand.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to it then. Thank you very much.